Israel Adesanya is what he knew and thought he was, the best player on his feet. Adesanya trying to close it out.
Israel Adesanya is back, and he's back in style. After a long-awaited return to the octagon, Adesanya reclaimed his UFC middleweight championship with a stunning second-round knockout win over Dricus Du Plessis at UFC 305 NRA Arena, Perth, Western Australia. This fight wasn't just any title bout, it was a clash between two champions of African heritage with the title of true African king in the UFC at stake. It was a night that will be remembered not only for its explosive ending, but also for the emotional roller coaster leading up to the fight. Adesanya came into this fight with a lot to prove. His last outing, where he lost the title to Sean Strickland, had left many fans and pundits questioning whether the last stylebender still had what it took to compete at the highest level. But when UFC 305 rolled into Perth, Australia, all doubts were quickly silenced. The first round of the fight started cautiously. Both Adesanya and Du Plessis seemed to be feeling each other out, exchanging leg kicks and jabs, but neither fighter landed anything of real significance. It was a slow and tactical start, as both men were looking for openings. Du Plessis landed a few low kicks while Adesanya peppered him with some quick punches, but nothing of note was scored in the early exchanges. Then came the second round, and everything changed. Du Plessis pressured Adesanya against the cage, hoping to land something big, but Adesanya had other plans. With lightning speed, Adesanya unleashed two massive right hands that stunned Du Plessis and sent him crashing to the canvas. It was a knockout punch that left the arena in shock and sent fans into a frenzy. Adesanya's crowning moment had arrived, and he did it in style. The knockout win was a massive relief for Adesanya, who had been under tremendous pressure leading into this fight. Du Plessis had been a thorn in his side, with the South African fighter's rise in the middleweight division casting a shadow over Adesanya's reign. The pre-fight press conference between the two fighters was heated, with Adesanya brought to tears by the intensity of their exchange. But in the end, it was Adesanya who had the last word in the cage. First and foremost, I want to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, Adesanya said in his post-fight interview. I went in there tonight with a plan, and I executed it perfectly. I fought a great fighter in Dricus, but tonight was my night. With the win, Adesanya became a three-time UFC middleweight champion, cementing his place as one of the best fighters in the world. He now holds a 14-3 records in the UFC, with all of his losses coming in title fights. His striking, once again, proved to be his greatest asset, as he notched his 16th career knockout in mixed martial arts. Adesanya's knockout accuracy may not always show up on the stat sheet. He has a striking accuracy of 48%, but when he finds his rhythm, no one in the UFC can stand in his way. While Adesanya's striking is what makes him a fan favorite, he also has an underrated ground game. A purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Adesanya has shown solid takedown defense throughout his UFC career, with a 78% success rate in that department. On the other hand, Du Plessis has shown great power in his fights, racking up 4 knockouts in just 7 UFC bouts. But in this fight, it was clear that Adesanya had the upper hand from the start. Du Plessis entered the fight with a 7-1 record in the UFC, with many fans backing him after his upset win over Robert Whittaker at UFC 290. However, despite his strong record, Adesanya's experience and skill set proved to be too much for him to handle. Du Plessis managed to land over 60% of his strikes in the second round, but Adesanya's knockout power ultimately made the difference. In his post-fight interview, Adesanya reflected on the victory and his journey to reclaiming the title. I was well prepared for him, Adesanya said. My team and I had everything planned out, and I trusted my instincts. When I landed those punches, I knew it was over. Adesanya also took the opportunity to address the pre-fight build-up and the tension that had developed between him and Du Plessis. The rivalry between the two fighters had been brewing for over a year, ever since Du Plessis defeated Robert Whittaker and began calling himself the real African champion. This claim didn't sit well with Adesanya, who was born in Nigeria, and felt that Du Plessis was disrespecting his heritage. At the UFC 305 press conference, things got even more heated when Adesanya was asked if he planned to take the belt back to Nigeria if he won. Du Plessis interrupted, asking if Adesanya was taking his servants with him. The comment sparked a fiery back and forth between the two fighters, with Adesanya visibly angry and emotional. "Shut the hell up," Adesanya shouted. "You don't know anything about my story. My father and I had to wake up at 4 a.m. to clean banks while my mom studied to become a nurse. Don't talk about my story if you don't know what I've been through." Du Plessis fired back, saying, "I don't care about your story," but Adesanya wasn't done. "I'll show you who you are on Sunday," Adesanya said, promising to let his fists do the talking. The tension between the two fighters made for one of the most intense build-ups to a fight in recent memory, and the press conference at RAC Arena in Perth was nothing short of explosive. But despite the bad blood, Adesanya showed tremendous respect for Du Plessis after the fight, praising him for being a tough opponent and for pushing him to be better. Adesanya's emotional response after the press conference highlighted just how much this fight meant to him. "I do this for my family and the people I love," he said, pointing to his family in the front row of the arena. "I'm a human being. I can cry and I can whoop your ass at the same time." Adesanya's win over Du Plessis was more than just a title defense, it was a statement. After losing his title to Sean Strickland last year, many wondered if Adesanya would ever return to his dominant form. But on this night in Perth, he silenced the doubters and reminded everyone why he's considered one of the greatest fighters in UFC history. "I felt like it was a bad dream," Adesanya said when asked about his loss to Strickland. "It wasn't a nightmare, it was just like trying to hit a guy and feeling like my arms were made of noodles. I couldn't get into my rhythm, and Sean just never let me settle. It was one of the most frustrating fights of my career. But that frustration is now behind him." Adesanya's knockout win over Du Plessis has put him back on top of the middleweight division, and he's already looking ahead to what's next. "This was just the beginning," Adesanya said. "I'm back, and I'm better than ever." The fight against Du Plessis marked Adesanya's first return to the octagon since his shocking loss to Strickland. In that fight, Adesanya was a heavy favorite, but Strickland's relentless pace and pressure left Adesanya unable to find his rhythm. Strickland even knocked Adesanya down in the first round and went on to dominate the fight, winning a unanimous decision and claiming the UFC middleweight title. "I didn't realize it was the last round," Adesanya said, reflecting on the Strickland fight. "I looked up and saw a final round and thought, damn, I need to do something, but it was too late. I just couldn't get into my flow." Now, with the Strickland fight behind him, Adesanya is focused on the future. He knows that the middleweight division is as competitive as ever, and there are plenty of challengers waiting in the wings. But after reclaiming his title with such a decisive victory, Adesanya is confident that he's still the man to beat. "I'm here to stay," Adesanya said. "There are a lot of great fighters in this division, but I'm the king. I've been through the highs and the lows.